Okay, in the interest of time, we're going to get started with the panel. So if the people in line can try to quiet down just a little bit, and we'll get started. So I'm Mike Doyle. I'm the Vice President for Research and Economic Development at New Mexico Tech. And I'm going to hand the microphone over, and we'll step through each of our companies, and each of them will say a few words about their company, and then we'll go through some questions.
Hi, everyone. My name is Michele Ostraat, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Pajarito Powder. We're a company headquartered in Albuquerque, and we predominantly supply and manufacture catalysts for the hydrogen economy. So our catalysts go into electrolyzers and fuel cells to be able to both produce hydrogen and then also utilize the energy from them.
Check. Hello. Hi, I'm Dex Halpin. I'm the Vice President of the High Altitude Platform Station with AeroVironment. AeroVironment is one of the largest from the provider of the Mars helicopter, along with JPL and NASA. My system, my group is High Altitude Platform Stations, so we do prototype aircraft that fly in the stratosphere for 6 months at a time, and we're based out of the spaceport, New Mexico.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Yun Li. I'm the CEO of a company called Filtravate. Filtravate is an advanced material company. We're making membranes for biopharmaceutical processing, and the biopharmaceutical medicine is coming very fast and grow really fast, and they need the critical separation technologies. That's how we solve the problem. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tom Chepucavage. I'm the CEO of Flow Aluminum. We have an aluminum CO2 battery that uses no rare earth minerals, no lithium or cobalt. So with that chemistry, it's not flammable, and it actually has more than double the energy density of a lithium ion battery, performs better at extreme temperatures, and in a flow format, in a large sea container grid storage scale, it actually captures carbon.
Okay, thanks. So the format here is I'll ask a general question, and then we'll step down through each of the individuals, and they can provide their perspective. So our first question is, discuss how you determine your compelling value proposition. How will customers benefit by switching from the way they're doing things now to using your product to address their needs using your solutions?
All right, so one of those is that we use exceptionally scarce materials. So when you think about critical minerals and you know, the scarcity of platinum group metals, we actually use iridium, which is a material that is 7 times less plentiful than platinum. It's actually a byproduct from platinum mining. And so one of the challenges we have is a severely constrained supply chain. And so our value proposition in the electrolyzer side is that we have developed the manufacturing know-how to be able to synthesize our iridium oxides with exceptionally high surface areas. And what that means is then we're better able to utilize every atom of iridium, which increases the value that our customers get when they use our iridium oxide versus some of our competitors. So in our case, our value proposition is really based on a technology enhancement.
So let me just tell you a little bit about our aircraft, what we intend to do with it. It's a 270-foot wingspan, solar-powered, battery-operated aircraft that flies up around 65,000 feet. It carries a number of payloads, and payloads are the things that provide a service. And our value proposition is to reach 2 markets. One is the defense market, the other one is the commercial market. And the commercial market really involves providing services to something in the region of 40% of the population of our planet who don't have reliable internet or communications. And it's just a way of kind of providing societal needs with that service. So the idea is to base ourselves in a variety of countries around the world and have a fleet of aircraft operating over these underserved areas. Carry, obviously I can't tell you what they are, but they also have a commercial application which will do Earth observations, so coastal erosion, fire damage, all sorts of other sort of applications that we can use our payloads for. So really it's to provide a service globally for societal needs.
Filtravate is an advanced material company, and the material itself has many applications. And the different applications, we can extract value proposition. So for us, important thing is identify a key problems that have no solution or need a solution, and use our technology, how our technology the advantage to address that particular problem. So that's on the high level. Specifically, we select biopharmaceutical processing, and more specifically is one particular step in the biopharmaceutical processing is they call viral clearance. Towards the very end of processing, you have to separate protein from viruses. And the protein and the smallest viruses, the size differences is about 5 to 10 nanometers. So we have a capability to make our membrane, the pore size control very tight, so have the capability to separate viruses from protein. That's a big problem in the industry and very hard to solve. That's how we come up with our value proposition and our application, our beachhead application.
Yeah, so over the weekend, I saw a story about a plane that got redirected on the West Coast. The value proposition is pretty stark. And we also, using aluminum salts, it's much less expensive than the rare earth minerals. So, we were speaking with GM, and that was really attractive to them. And the high energy density for the aerospace industry, very attractive to them. So kind of the value proposition statement is it's a more sustainable and safer high performance battery that's also low cost.
Okay, thanks. So any new high-tech company is going to have a major consideration relating to barriers to competition, and one of the main routes to dealing with that is through management of intellectual property. Now, there are a number of ways to do that through patents, copyrights, trade secrets. Can you discuss your experiences in protecting intellectual property relating to your particular products?
Okay, so at Pajarito, we've licensed technology from UNM and also from Los Alamos. And so we have been a beneficiary, if you will, of patented materials and know-how processes. But largely our strategy right now regarding IP is to retain all of our information as trade secrets. And as you know, when you file a patent, you basically get exclusivity for 21 years. And the price you pay is you teach everybody else how to do what it is you do. And so we think that there's a better value proposition for us to keep our process know-how as a trade secret. The risk, obviously, is that if somebody else can figure out how to make that material, we probably won't be able to produce the material that we make right now. But in that we have is something that we feel very confident being able to keep in-house. So it's just our strategy.
We have two different strategies. One, when we're working with a defense customer, They are very tightly controlled. We're very tightly controlled. They have lots of standards and regulations that we have to comply to. And the threat of not complying is very large fines and prison time. So we're very highly motivated to keep our secret secret. On the commercial side, we have our own IP, which we protect, and obviously have our patents for. But because we work with a commercial customer, they kind of buy some of the IP from us so that they can develop their own systems in parallel to us. And that's a good kind of business partnership that works well.
For Filtravate, again, it's a material science-based company, and we have two ways to protect our advantages. One is standard IP protections. We license technology from New Mexico State, and we're also in the process of issue a new patent, apply for a new patent. Another way to protect our advantage is a trade secret, kind of like in the kitchen, people can give you different ingredients. Can you make things? That's your secret. That's how we do it. We're working with Los Alamos National Lab through the LEAP program to do that trade secret development kind of thing. So we know how to develop our material, go through different processes and conditions.
So Flow Aluminum is fortunate to be tech transfer out of UNM. So we're fortunate to have that team behind us. And they filed a provisional patent in July of 2022. We filed a PCT the patenting process to find out if there'll be issues sooner rather than later. But in general, UNM runs our IP protection.
Okay, thanks. So one of the key issues in creating a startup is trying to decide what the right organizational structure is, and that can have significant consequences down the road depending on which direction you go, whether you're headed to IPO, whether you're headed to be a revenue generating organization, for example. So can you discuss how you determined what was the right organizational structure for your startup?
All right, so I joined Pajarito about 14 months ago, so I wasn't involved in the early, decisions around becoming an LLC or a C Corp, for example. But my only comment on this particular topic is that it's interesting because just a couple of days ago, we decided to convert from an LLC to a C Corp. And so, some of the advantages of an LLC have maybe kind of run their course, and now there's more advantage to becoming a C Corp. I would also say that in our case, some of our investors actually had a very strong preference for us to be a C Corp. And so we're responding to some investor feedback as well. So I think it's something that you can be a little bit flexible with and change if you need to. So.
You just answered the question. I was going to do an add-on question, whether or not that was driven by investors, because venture capitalists typically prefer C Corps because it simplifies, their exit at various stages.
So AeroVironment Inc. For a large company dealing mostly in defense. The HAPS group that I run is very much like a startup company. We're very agile. We're sort of preceding the market with what we're doing. So we're kind of a bit of a unicorn within AeroVironment in that we are getting funded by a large telecommunications customer to develop aircraft. And in that way, it's very much like a startup.
When Filtravate started, we already have a seed investor lined up or pre-seed. And the preferred structure is C Corp. So we always start a company as a C Corp. There's not much to think about.
Yeah, so, the battery industry is capital intensive, so we knew out of the gate we'd be trying to raise a lot of money, and venture capitalists like Delaware C Corp. So, we went that route. They like Delaware C Corps because the courts are more established. Things like arbitration typically go more smoothly. Didn't go well for Elon, but here we are.
So it's interesting. I started a company 30 years ago as a spinoff from University of California. And we were looking at venture capital, and they said, go C Corp. Over the years, we wound up pivoting towards being revenue generating and discovered that we really wished, we could convert, but by then we had so many shareholders, we weren't able to. And we got stuck with double taxation. Money. So it's a very strategic question that you really have to think forward about. Our next question. So technologists tend to focus on science, but understanding the value chain is critically important to knowing how to market your company. And
All right, so I'll first echo the first part of that question. Technologists love focusing on the science. And so it's often a challenge to get your researchers and your technology people to be thinking about the business of science, because what you actually have to do is start to turn a profit or monetize your science in some way. And so, looking at the value chain, again, I would go back to just the reality in the electrolyzer catalyst area, right? Going back to the extreme scarcity of iridium, for example, it's almost like that value chain defines itself, because we can't mine any more iridium than what the world produces. It's either doesn't exist, or if we start to mine more iridium, then we're going to start causing all kinds of issues with the platinum markets and other types of cascading, type implications that a lot of technologists may not be thinking about when they're doing their research. So I think we're in a good and a bad position in that the worldwide supply of iridium is basically set. And then what our challenge is to try to figure out how much of that we can actually run through our shop. So how much we can actually get compared to some of our competitors. So that's what I would have to say on that.
So for the HAPS team, we definitely love the science, we love the technology. The HAPS team has been doing high altitude platform systems for probably near 30 years. And they are very innovative, they're very smart people. I often feel that I'm the dumbest person in the room because I don't have a PhD, but there are people who are very passionate about what they do in terms of the science and the tech. And the value chain is, as I spoke of earlier, that there's an awful lot of people in the world who don't have basic connectivity, basic telecommunications, basic internet. And the ability to provide that doesn't just lie with us, obviously. We're not there to solve all the world's problems. We are complementary to the other companies, satellite companies, air-based communications, ground-based communications. We're all there to provide a service to people who need it. And I think that's where our value is. We kind of fit in a particular niche of that service.
For Filtravate, because filtration business is rich everywhere in our life, from food processing to bioprocessing to medical to industrial to water treatment. We focus the area biopharmaceutical. The value chain is vertical integration, right? We provide fundamental material for emerging technologies that OEMs are developing to fulfill a need in the pharmaceutical processing industry. So our value add to the whole supply chain, the ecosystem is provide that critical basic material that all the filtration needed. So that's how we identify our values. That's what, when we do our product development, prototype development, we focus on the value add in specific application. In this case, will be virus clearance and the protein concentration.
Yeah, focusing our value chain is, quite a challenge. Batteries are needed everywhere. A safer, more sustainable, less expensive battery. We were just exploring implantable defibrillator batteries. Consumer electronics. Our biz dev guy was in the consumer electronics. But actually on the supply chain side, it's probably our biggest selling point, being that we use no rare earth minerals. Cobalt's about $15 a pound and aluminum's about $1 a pound. So, we're working with military applications because we could recycle our batteries and never have to source, metals from outside the country. So, yeah, the value chain is broad for our product.
Just one other thought. I'll share with you an interesting thing that's happening at Pajarito. So we are focused on manufacturing and selling catalyst powders. And very, very often by our customers, we are asked, can you make inks? Can you make decals? Can you make coated membranes? And they're pushing us to move out of where we think our core value chain, area of expertise is. And so it's a very strategic decision as well to think about what you as your organization are really good at and what your core contribution is, and not deviating too far from that. Just because maybe a customer's asking for it. Certainly over time, if the customer feedback is such that, yes, moving into inks, for example, would be a very compelling value proposition for us, we should be doing it strategically instead of just, chasing every single customer and chasing every single customer request. So being able to understand what your value proposition is and what you do well, I think is a really important thing for a small business or for a startup. Because if you focus on everything, then you're not going to get anything done. And so it's best instead to just focus on what you do well.
So that's a great segue into my next question, which is focusing on durability, but it's also focusing on where you see startups, especially, focus on where we are today, where we're going to be next year. Where do you see your company being in 5 years and in 10 years? And how do you foresee how you'll be needing to defend your market position at those milestones?
Yeah, I would definitely say that the tension in a startup or in a small business is really to focus on the fires, on the here and now. But you have to carve out time, even if it's 10 or 20% of your time, to be able to focus on those longer term types of challenges. And some of those are company driven, right? Your need to want to out innovate your customers. You want to stay ahead of where your competitor IP might be. But then you also have to be aware of how the market that you're selling into is going to be changing in 5 or 10 years. And so in an example, again, in the electrolyzer area that we're confronted with is right now electrolyzers are based on an alkaline technology, and the new commercial products are starting to come out there in PEM, so they're in a proton exchange membrane, water electrolyzers. And so you have basic catalysts that are PEM catalysts. But we know that in 5, 10, 15 years, again, because of the scarcity of some of these critical minerals like iridium and platinum, that technology based upon those scarce materials is not going to be commercially viable. And so we're expecting a trend probably in 7 to 10 years towards AEM. And so we have a number of research initiatives right now looking at being able to develop catalysts for the AEM markets, knowing that now we're not going to sell those today, but that we need to be validated in customer systems where the markets you're selling into, what their constraints are and what their future trajectories look like.
Yep, great question. So one of my emphasis points for my team at the moment is to move away from the science project mentality and sort of being in love with the technology and how to build really kind of interesting prototype aircrafts, and start looking at the long term, exactly where are we going to be in 5 years, where are we going to be in 10 years? And the answer is kind of twofold. Again, it's a commercial element and a defense element. On the defense side, it's most likely that between 5 years and 10 years from now, we'll be doing kind of large scale manufacturing US based. And that's to keep things within kind of, and I know I don't sound like an American, I'm not local obviously, but try to keep everything in-house in the country. And that's for security reasons and protecting technology within the States. And we'll be building up to supply defense industry around the world and kind of increasing their capabilities according to the requirements that they have. On the commercial side, it's much more likely that we will be looking kind of globally to set up manufacturing sites in other areas, in other continents, so that we can get kind of type certification to fly locally to provide revenue generating services there as we provide the sort of telecommunication services. So long term for us, it's all about moving from being technophiles to sort of production and manufacturing and sort of global supply.
For Filtravate, we're in the process of raising funding, and this is current business plan. Biopharmaceutical and area for the critical separations of virus and the protein. That's a 5-year plan. My background, my passion is help a company start up and get through the valley of death and pass along to more people in the field. But for 10 years plan though, I can see this technology. That's my personal vision, if I continue. This technology can do water filtration in the future. And one way of water filtration is called membrane distillation. Right now, if you want to process seawater, you have to use a lot of energy. My long-term vision for this technology and that this company can do is membrane distillation eventually can treat seawater cheaply to address the freshwater crisis globally. But I'm not doing that in my pitch. Okay, VC were thinking I'm not focused. So right now, our focus for 5 years is biopharmaceutical applications with high return and to address very much needed market.
Yeah, so two of our co-founders, Dr. Wei and our PhD candidate, Chris Fetro, they'll continue to innovate over the next 5, 10, 40 years. They have already patented several batteries in between when they filed for the aluminum CO2 battery. Dr. Wei is one of the foremost battery experts in the country. I was talking to a VC in Boston, and I know Dr. Wei. We tried to recruit her, so she's long term. That's what she's going to do. She's probably going to create another 100 batteries. But for us, our passion out of the gate was to manufacturing workforce. We believe we can scale this up. We have on our advisory team Bob Gallion, who was the co-founding CTO of CATL. It's the largest battery company in the world. It's a Chinese company. They have 37% of the market share. He said they very seriously considered the Borderplex region for industrial gas, the train lines going in there, NMSU and UTEP, the talent there, proximity to Mexico. So our big swing for the fences goal is our own version of a gigafactory in the Borderplex region, as well as manufacturing up here and thousands of jobs created.
Okay, great.
I will add a little bit of
Sure, go ahead.
About the Filtravate. Hello? And membrane technology has been around for past 6 or 7 decades, has no innovations. And so we talk about protecting our position in this industry. And because it's basic material science problem we're trying to solve, and the entry barrier is pretty high. That's our confidence. And going through past 3-4 years development work, we understand it's not a market. The IP protection and the trade secret entry barrier is very high for other people, even though they know the secret ingredients, they're still hard to make. So that's why we protect ourselves for past 5 years and 10 years.
Okay, thanks. So when I started my company, one of my earliest investors was a guy named Don Landgraf. He was a mentor and a pioneer in the area of insurance information technology. But one of his favorite sayings, or one of my favorite sayings that he cash flow, access to capital markets. So I've got 3 questions. So what have you learned about cash and cash flow? What have you learned about accessing the capital markets? And do you need VC funding? And sort of a side question is, if you have IP, have you used other avenues to raise capital?
There's a lot to that question. All right, so cash is king. That's the phrase everyone uses, cash is king. So it is interesting. I mean, you know, Pajarito, we're fortunate in that we have now revenue generating sales of our materials, which I think is a really important stage for startups and small businesses to get to. But we battle almost daily with our cash flow, right? Because if you can't spend something you don't have. And so, you know, for us, there's a lot of internal discussions around accounts receivable. Do we give somebody 30-day terms? Do we give them 45-day terms? Cash becomes a really big business strategy because at the end of the day, you got to make payroll and you got to pay your rent, and you do that with cash. So that you had about 100 questions in there. What else was in there? Oh, I don't have. Yeah, so we benefit from having some multinational investors, for example, that are very helpful for us, and I think you know, they're not just interested in us from an investment perspective, but they also want us to be successful because we're going to be a you know, hopefully a future supplier for some of their commercial projects. So in those cases, having access to how it's the understanding from them what their market trends are, how they see, for example, a growth in fuel cells or growth in electrolyzers. That's also really, really important information that you can get. So I started this by saying cash is king, but at the same time, having investors that can bring something more to the table than just money is also really, really important too. And I think that's something that we've benefited from quite a bit.
I'm sure everybody in the room is aware that developing new technology, new prototypes is very expensive, and anything to do with flying is, you know, just, you know, sort of throwing money away before you actually get a viable product. And you know, cash is definitely king, but you're only as good as the product that you build. You must have a viable product. And in our kind of industry, there are lots of competitors. There are lots of people developing high-altitude platform systems, whether they are balloons, blimps, airships, or kind of fixed wing that we're doing. It's very competitive, and there's a lot of competition for the funding that's out there. At the moment, we're pretty good. We have like I say, a international telecommunications company who are paying us to develop an aircraft and then provide a service for them and generate revenue in the locations that they specifically target. And in terms of the defense side, they're also sort of funding us. But there are lots of other areas to get funding. I went to the European Space Agency, a kind of working group in the Netherlands a couple of weeks ago. And in Europe and kind of Middle East and, you know, other areas that aren't America, they are heavily funding the development of HAPS, high-altitude platform systems. They're putting a lot of money into it, and they're kind of spreading it evenly amongst interest of the government or seed funding companies, then you're going to do pretty well. And that's the secret, is have a viable product, make sure it works properly, and get your name out there and make sure that you're sort of getting the attention that you need.
For Filtravate, for young startup companies, for the companies I have worked on, is always in the process crossing the valley of death. And we really don't have a whole lot of luxury talking about cash flow management. We have very limited funding. So the philosophy always is doing very lean startup and very, very focused. For Filtravate, the way to generate cash during that process is government grants. We have National Science Foundation grant. We have LEAP supported development, and we leverage New Mexico Small Business Assistance Program. What we try to do there is to try to get one product, very small product, called minimum viable product. With that product, our goal is to generate early cash, no matter how small, for two reasons. One is the early cash generations would validate our technology and our market and our applications. Also, that will enable us to raise next round of funding, which we need a lot, right? For new material companies, the VC investment, we need quite a bit. And so at this time, cash flow, normally we don't talk about it. We really leverage every resource we can have, and we don't have headcounts. We don't have 10, 20, or even 5 headcount to pay the labor. So we do work whatever needed. And
dollar pre-seed round. You know, the battery industry, developing batteries is very capital intensive. So, you know, the cash flow is, we feel that very acutely. You know, we've got some great finance people developing rolling cash flow workflows and really using a lot of good tools for managing it. But I mean, we're working with 2 prototyping shops that in the last week have doubled their statement of work costs. So it's, you know, you're always hitting landmines, but we're in a good spot, and I'm glad that we have the team we have that's got the financial acumen.
Great, thanks. So I mentioned one of my mantras is cash is truth. The other mantra is timing is everything. So let's talk about timing. You know, with a company, entering too early or too late can be devastating. So how do you gauge timing? What's your experience in working out what the right timing is for market entry?
That's a good question. So Pajarito was formed about 12 years ago. And I think it was at a time where there wasn't a lot of buzz for the hydrogen economy. It was something that might be a solution for the future. And I think the organization, Pajarito, was probably a bit too soon in terms of its entry time. But I would say we have also really benefited from many, many years of experience in really being able to manufacture and hone the characteristics of our materials now that are considered to be world-class for both our fuel cells and our electrolyzers. And I would say right now there is no better time to be in the hydrogen business than today. Our work culture, starting to establish our name and our brand because hydrogen is completely taking off for us right now. So it's an exciting time to be a part of Pajarito and to be in the hydrogen economy. And I think if we had, had a startup 6 months ago or a year ago, we wouldn't have been mature enough to really understand how to be able to capitalize on just the explosive growth we're seeing in this industry right now.
Yeah, so AeroVironment has always been an innovative company, and Paul McCready, the founder, was always kind of seen as someone who was ahead of his time. And AeroVironment first started providing small unmanned systems to the military around the world very early on. They were kind of first to market, and captured market share. And as I said earlier on, even the stratospheric platforms that AeroVironment were building 25 years ago were well ahead of its time. And we did a hydrogen version of our stratospheric aircraft, solar version, broke all sorts of records. And even though it was a kind of NASA-funded program, the interest in it kind of tailed off because where was the need? Where was the requirement for the military at that time? And it didn't really exist. But now, that need, that requirement, not just for the military, but for society, actually exists. And being relevant, being innovative has helped us, because we're kind of ahead. We are the sort of industry leaders in this area. So, yeah, being innovative is very important. If you're preceding the market, it takes a lot of convincing to kind of pull the requirement from your customers rather than kind of pushing you into providing that requirement for them. But this is a good time for us. It's a really good time for stratospheric platforms.
This membrane technology, late 2019, we have a sense that biopharmaceutical processing need this type of technology to filter the medicines. But we didn't know next year is a COVID. And through COVID, if you guys take a vaccine, you will know the monoclonal antibody therapy and your vaccine you got is all processed through bioprocessing process. They use live cells, basically. And because of COVID, the biopharmaceutical industry has exploded. And currently they have more than 250 different medicines in development. So through the customer discovery, we talked to many customers from OEM to end users. Filtravate, this particular technology so happen right now is right timing and is much needed. And so we're thinking, at that time, we're thinking the industry will slow coming, become actually fast coming. So our job as a company development is how fast we can get our product to the market.
So the ideal timing would have been for us to have a grid scale battery that captures carbon right as the Inflation Reduction Act passed, because the amount of money that flowed into grid scale batteries and the EV market was unbelievable. But the timing is perfect now to bring a safer battery to market, less expensive battery. So that all being said, we're pushing as hard as we can to get them to market as fast as we can, because it's still red hot.
Okay, now we're to the last question that I have, but I think it's also the biggest question that's on many people's minds. It's how do we enable your company to stay here and to thrive?
That's another really good question. All right, so Pajarito, you might not know this, is named after Pajarito Mountain. So even our name has a connection to New Mexico. And I think about the fact that we've licensed our technology from UNM and from Los Alamos. We benefit from so many state programs, from JTIP, the Economic Development Department, EDD. Oh, hey, there we go. Okay, free plug. Okay. We get tremendous support by being in New Mexico. And quite frankly, I graduated from New Mexico more than 20 years ago and spent my whole career on the East Coast, and I just wanted to come back to New Mexico. So just recognize that there's a huge draw for, for people to want to live and work here in New Mexico. We've had a really good success with being able to recruit really good employees, both senior level employees, mid-career and early career, from UNM, from New Mexico State, from New Mexico Tech. So we're getting really good talent, and we're also have been very effective at being able to recruit from outside the state to have people move here. I think a lot of it has to do with the value proposition that we offer to the world in terms of being a producer and utilizer of clean energy. It's something that resonates with a lot of people who want to work in an organization that creates impact. I would also say that we are a big beneficiary of the national labs, Sandia and Los Alamos, and it's not just the programs that they're able to offer in terms of SINT or some of the characterization capabilities that they have, but they also help to build an ecosystem, right? Kind of going back to the Inflation Reduction Act, there's a lot right now around Buy America, and the fact that Pajarito is one of the very, very few domestic catalyst producers allows us to potentially leverage a lot of funding and a lot of provisions in some of these very, very big programs that are going around the federal government around provisions related to Buy America. So, support of the domestic companies is very, very important. I would say one of our biggest threats to staying in New Mexico isn't New Mexico versus any other state in the country. It's some of the protectionism that we might start seeing with some of the critical minerals, for example. If the United States decide that we're no longer able to export our materials to Asia or to Europe from a protectionist perspective, or the EU does this, or Asian economies start doing this as well, we may have to put some manufacturing capabilities closer to where some of our markets are, if for example, with tariffs or we're just restricted from selling internationally. So, long story short, I'm a huge proponent of New Mexico. I wanted to come back professionally and personally, and again, thank you to everybody in the state who is working to support startups and small businesses. It's really, really appreciated. Thanks.
So I've got a bit of a history with New Mexico. Before I joined AeroVironment, I was in the Royal Air Force, and I was based at Halpin Air Force Base for 3 years as the British commander there, doing all of the training unit. So I was very familiar with that area, the airspace, the kind of local support infrastructure that we had. So when I joined AeroVironment, I joined as a It has to fly all the way up to the stratosphere, so 65,000 feet. It has to have clear airspace, and it flies above normal controlled airspace. So I kind of scoured the states, including Hawaii. Didn't get to go to Hawaii or base in Hawaii, which is a shame. However, in my travels and in my kind of exploration of where the best site was, we came across Spaceport America and also Physical Sciences Lab, NMSU. We kind of partnered with both of them to take our aircraft. We worked with Francisco's team there, kind of explaining to them what we needed, and in turn they kind of were more than helpful and more than willing to help us build, set up an aerodrome facility there. Within 4 months we had kind of briefed them, got a contractor on site, and set up a full airstrip, kind of apron, office buildings, a very, very large hangar for our very large aircraft, and a great partnership with Spaceport America team there, and also with the White Sands Missile Range folk who control the airspace. So it was a perfect setup for us, and not only just the infrastructure and the teams, but the weather and the airspace. You know, New Mexico has a fairly unique climate in that area. So we get, I can't remember, Francis, how many, it's like 300 and something days of sunshine. And although it's kind of windy, we kind of, in the stratosphere, we sit above the winds and things. And the airspace west of Spaceport America is known as the Wismar Shadow, and there's very little population and very little kind of used airspace from airliners and things. So New Mexico for us is the perfect flight test area, but also going forward, we are looking to productionize and set up manufacturing facilities, and they have to kind of be close to where we're going to.
Filtravate licensed the technology from New Mexico State University, and it's a locally born company. and we even set up our headquarters in Las Cruces for the vision that we wanted to help build local economic ecosystem, start with technology startups. Since company being formed, we have been working with Los Alamos National Lab, New Mexico Tech, New Mexico State Universities. So the local technology or science-based talent are pretty impressive. And we like to continue to work with people, with the smart scientists to address very difficult material development, scale-up challenges. The LEAP has, Los Alamos National Labs program, LEAP program has helped us tremendously for the past 2 years. We will be working in a lab using little presser, and right now we'll be able to make a sheet, a membrane. And that's a huge step forward. During the process, we'll actually discover some challenges that we have never foreseen. However, the scientists already have the idea how to overcome that. And I don't think we could do that without lab support. The very experienced, very creative, actually creative scientists. We're looking forward to actually build a small pilot factory in the States. And by then, we would love to leverage the JTAP or the other system program. And also wanted to mention New Mexico Small Business System Program from we work with New Mexico Tech has been very helpful to us. And the students are dedicated and professors are very supportive.
Yeah, I think, it's consensus with a lot of the entrepreneurs in the state that their talent, a specific talent is a big challenge. I think, when we scale, the manufacturing workforce is definitely here, but right now I'm really struggling to find folks that have worked at CATL, LG Chem, Fluence, Siemens, Tesla, that are here or are willing to relocate back here. We desperately need someone from who scaled a battery company or has been in a large production volume battery company. And I found two, but they're going to be very, very, very expensive to bring here and to move here. So it's a big challenge. And I don't know, with the state, it's unique. You have technology coming out of the lab that's niche, that's very specialized, that there's probably only a few people in the world that do that. So you're not going to find them here. You're going to have to bring them here. And so that's, and I don't know how much the universities here could do to address that, to find, a very highly specialized PhD in some area. But there's definitely, workforces here, and we have to, aim for those and leverage those. But I think the talent piece is probably one of the most significant challenges the state has to scaling corporations.
Okay, thanks. I think we've got a few minutes to take a couple questions from the audience. If anybody would like to ask our panel something.
Have you lost employees who
We have, but they tend to be very early career. So we find in some cases it can be hard to compete with the likes of the national labs in terms of salaries with the national labs, and also with some of the big companies like Intel, for example. So I think there is some challenge around getting some roles staffed. But in general, we haven't seen a lot of people in our organization leaving for the national labs.
None here.
Okay. Any more questions? Okay, well, thanks a lot.